All right. Get my audio in order, and then we will start. Should be starting soon. Cool. Oh, that's weird. There it is. All right. So let's do a quick review just on kind of what we did. So last week we kind of left off with the idea that I would finish the other five. Five. Because I did the flower one last week, right? And just kind of walking through kind of what we did and how we got to where we got to, right? So in this case, I spent a little extra time, right? I actually did these today. So in terms of like, because I was actually out of the country for the past couple of days, so I didn't actually have that much time. But I did want to kind of show how fast that process actually is, right? From what we have here, I started these at like maybe 2 o'clock, maybe 3 o'clock. And from there, I just started painting, right? And using the same assets that we kind of talked about last week. You know, I painted one rock, I painted one tree, same tree from last week, right? I had this grass texture and grass brush combo, right? Where like we're kind of getting these, I guess, interesting patches here. I'll show you. Kind of getting like these silhouette edges, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what grass is, right? Like it's grass blades that are all like, you know, compiled together. And when you hit light, some of them get that light, some of them don't. So trying to hit that, make sure, you know, obviously I missed a spot, but you know, not a huge deal. But trying to get like these silhouette moves. And then there's a little bit of texture on the inside, right? That's just from brushes and various things. And I just kind of did one piece and then just laid it flat, and I repeated that same motif, you know, over and over and over. This one doesn't have it. And over again, right? And with one tree, one grass texture, some, you know, brushes that kind of get me in the right zone. And then after that, like all my color decisions and everything were already kind of there. You know what I mean? And we just take a quicker look. And you can still see how loose a lot of this is, right? There's still stray pieces here and there. There's little things. I painted like one leaf and duplicated it around, right? And just kind of like showing how quick of a process this actually is. And something to really understand about color keys, right, is that it's not a finished painting, right? It is a medium-ish kind of quality that kind of gets us in the right color space, right? Understanding that this is just going to be a guide for somebody else to color and light the scenes, right? Because we're going to give this to 3D modelers, we're going to give this to, you know, compositors, whoever, right? And this is going to kind of dictate what that scene is going to look like. Sometimes, you know, they might use, like, for example, when I was at Netflix, they actually took some of my color keys and like used it in the final painting, which is cool. But that's not always the case, and that's not actually what they're supposed to be doing with it anyway. It's just this one scenario they happen to do it. But because I work very clean, because I work very effectively, it's possible to do that with these paintings. You know what I mean? Because with the process that we kind of described before, you know, it's very silhouetted out. The layers are very organized and very well, I guess, layered to where you can kind of take this to finish if you wanted. Something that I see a lot, especially in color keys, is that they're super loose and super like gestural, and which is fine. There's nothing wrong with those. But it does make it hard to finish, does make it hard to like take things further if you ever wanted, if you ever needed to, right? So that's kind of why I work the way I do. You know, oftentimes there's always like, oh, hey, can we just get a finished painting of that? We really like the way it looks, or whatever they need it for production, whatever the case may be. The process is a little bit more dynamic opposed to painting on one layer and, you know, hoping all that kind of goes through pretty easily. You know what I'm saying? So pretty quick, not amazing paintings by any means, but you can kind of see how how quickly all this really does come together. And something I want to kind of preface, right, for these images as a whole, they kind of like in this process that we did for this past month, it's kind of like set up in a weird way because, you know, in a normal setting, I really wouldn't do my value pass, right? Because this is week 2 here and we had a value pass here. I really wouldn't do this because, I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but it's not really that necessary, right? It's not really super important that I get the value pass right off the bat. It is important though that I get the colors, right? Because this is a color key. But I wanted to talk about this, I guess, piece by piece. That way people watching, people following along, people doing the assignments can actually understand what every step actually means, right? In reality, I would have done something like this. This is week 1. These images here, I guess there's a little bit of lighting here, but overall it's mostly like just kind of shape placement, to be completely real with you. Like the loose sketch that did this, and then basically skip to my week, was it week 3? Yeah. My week 3 assignment, where we basically have color. Skip straight to there, and then from there, send this off for a first pass. Be like, hey, this is kind of where I'm at. What do you think? And then, you know, we'll get the changes, whatever we need, whatever they tell me they need. And then after that, we'll go into this pass here, right? So within a week, you should probably have, you know, a good amount of these done. I'll have anywhere between like 3 to maybe 10 sometimes, depending on how many different beats there are in the sequence. It can vary, and it's not really a storyboard, right? Like, we're not watching her and doing all the camera movements and things like that. We just need every scene where something changes, right? Like, for example, looking at this, you know, we have, you know, the brighter scene in the beginning, right? And then boom, something changes, things get kind of darker, right? Something changes again, things get even more darker, right? There's only a little bit of light left. Something changes, Fox shows up, or Wolf shows up, and no light there, super dangerous, right? Something changes, we have all the light that we need, or all the brightness because of the flowers that she actually left the path to go find. And then something else changes, the realization that, you know, we are in danger, right? So it's not a storyboard moment. You don't have to show everything, but you do want to show the main ideas of each scene. This way, you know, they can kind of tie all of them together. So hopefully that makes sense. If there's any questions on that, just let me know. But I kind of wanted to show you, I guess, how all that turned out and kind of where we're going with this, right? So, but yeah, I guess, let's see. I guess that's all we got to talk about, right? Pretty simple and effective. Hopefully you can kind of see the method to my madness sometimes, right? I think a lot of times, you know, you'll see maybe the way other people work, and then you see the way I'm doing things, and it feels a little off sometimes, where it's like, oh, he's very lasso tool heavy, he's very shape heavy, you know, very graphic read heavy. And then you can kind of see the steps. You're like, oh, okay, I can see why you might make that many layers or do those many things. And for everybody else, it's going to be a little bit different, right? Everybody's going to be comfortable with a few less layers. They're going to be, or maybe they need a couple more layers than what I need, right? Just kind of like figure that out. It's going to take a bunch of paintings, probably hundreds, for you to start figuring out like, hey, I don't need that many layers, or hey, I need more layers than kind of what I have here to kind of get to a finish level, and you just adapt accordingly, right? So yeah, I guess short and simple, pretty easy. This was the February color and light kind of, I guess, or not color and light, color key process demo lecture notes, things like that, right? So we had our review for the color keys yesterday with the Livestream Plus people. If you do want to be part of that, right, we do have another month coming up, I guess starting today, which is level design, right? So if you want to be part of that, please join, you know, my Discord, and then look into the Discord shop. You'll see a Livestream Plus membership. Join that, and then you'll be part of the weekly feedback sessions that we do. Right now, there's a lot of people in there actually. There's 27 people in there, so there's a lot of feedback happening. So, you know, if you want to get better, if you want to kind of develop for pretty cheap, I might say, definitely, I mean, you know, join. So that in mind, color key is wrapped up. We're done. I'll post these in the Discord probably after this session, in the demos kind of section. I'll post it individually just so you can kind of see like what I actually did with these. Maybe you can compare them with some of my older versions and stuff like that. So, but yeah, sweet. color key's done. Let's see. So with that in mind, let's talk. Boom. Okay. So we're starting level design today, right? For those of you that are interested in level design, you know, great. Thanks for coming. For those that maybe aren't so much, I think this is kind of where it's the same talk maybe that we had like the last month, where every topic, there's people that want to learn things. There's people that don't want to learn certain things, right? It's like, oh, you know, maybe I don't need this as much. Maybe I need this a little bit more, right? And so, you know, the reason I kind of like doing this is because in reality, almost everything is applicable in some sort of way, right? A lot of times I'll be doing like, you know, like I'll be working in animation, and a lot of the things I learned in games actually comes into play, right? Because in animation, to be real, a level of like form language and I guess general design skills, I would definitely say, I don't want to say are lacking, but there is there's a less of a lean towards it. How about that, right? There are amazing designers there, absolutely. But the general vibe is that we're pushing for more story, more storytelling, and things like that, right? Because that, I mean, generally speaking, that's kind of what we're looking for in animation. There are a couple IPs here and there that really do push that bar, but overall, the designs are very simple, very real, very normal. And, you know, sometimes having a better design sense actually does push us into a different, you know, level of design, right? Like, you know, having a stronger understanding of not just story design, but also like prop design, you know, environment design, you know, the more technical aspects of designs that games also focuses on, and vice versa. Oftentimes I do a games project and there's no emphasis on story or anything that makes this enjoyable. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times you'll play a game and we'll start designing for a game and it's sterile as hell, right? It's like it's just gray. It's just like foggy gray. And then you can see every cut line on every object because people spent all this time designing these props. And it's like, oh, we got to show it off. It's like, you really don't. You know what I mean? You really don't need to do that because the place just looks boring as all hell. And there's a bit of both that you want to know, right? You don't have to be 100%, you know, diving into both sections, but there are some things that you might want to know because, you know, when I work in games, a lot of the animation things I learn really come into play. Whenever I work in animation, vice versa, or film or whatever, even theme park stuff, right? There's a lot of things that kind of make you a different artist, right? And in a field where we have to kind of stand out, right, and be somebody that is more useful in many different ways, right? Whether I agree with that like kind of trajectory of where our industry is going, right, where we have to wear multiple hats, has nothing to do with it. But the idea is that is what's happening, right? People are starting to need to do more and more things, right? So if you want to be still hired, if you still want to be viable in this industry, there is oftentimes this need to know many things, right? And at least dabbling in it a little bit can really help, especially like, you know, I'm not a storyboard artist, but I've taken a storyboard class. I've taken many storyboarding classes. And that's how, you know, I tend to have different compositions versus just the straight up rule of thirds, right? Because that's boring as all hell, right? And it's the same thing with this, right? Even though level design is primarily a game thing, there are things that you want to think about when it comes to layout, right? Which is a very heavy animation thing. You know what I mean? There's a lot of different things when it comes to composing that a level designers think about, the animators or people in animation don't think about. So, you know, if you're not really that interested in the topic, I would highly recommend participation just to kind of do it. You know, obviously if you got other things to do, you do what you need to do. But if you're kind of like, oh, I'll just wait for the next one, I probably wouldn't do that just because, you know, it's it might benefit you somewhere down the line that you're just not aware of. You know what I mean? So, but with that in mind, let's talk again with other stuff. So today we're gonna be talking about level design and just some core elements, not super core elements, but I do want to really make this abundantly clear. I'm not a level designer, right? I do things with level designers, right? Sometimes, but I just want to make it abundantly clear. I am not a level designer. I am not somebody that does this for a living. I'm just somebody that receives these blockouts from level designers. And these are things that I need to keep in mind when I'm working with those level designers, right? So if you're looking for something where like the hardcore, like I guess information breakdown of what level designers do, I can't do that for you. I'm not your guy. There's probably plenty of resources to do that. But what I can do is, as a concept artist, show you what we think about when we do receive a blockout like that. Because if you've ever worked in games or worked in a pipeline that has level designers in them, you know, you'll receive some sort of blockout. It'll look like a bunch of gray blocks. There'll be a colored block here and there. There'll be like, you know, weird things that are kind of consistently happening throughout the scenes. And you have to break that down, right? Obviously, the main ideas will usually be covered. Sorry. The main idea will usually be covered, right? There's always like, oh, this is kind of where they grab the ledge and this is where all those ledges are, or this is the kind of main kind of section where you're supposed to hit, where the big puzzle is, or whatever it is. And they'll kind of mark that with a red cube versus like the bunch of gray cubes that they have, right? So just understand that I can only kind of point some of these things out. Some of the mechanics, you know, in terms of actual breakdown understanding, I probably won't be able to do for you. And I don't want to create the illusion that I know how deep that rabbit hole goes, because it is a whole other field, right? So I just want you to keep that in mind as we're going through this. This is a concept artist's, I guess, approach to understanding level design versus actually learning how to level design. So, which is what we're doing, right? All right. So let's look at some stuff. I have some pictures here that I just wanted to talk about. All right. So I just gathered some references, right? I just looked around, and something that you want to do as somebody that plays games. Like I played games growing up. I've died in this level like a million times. If you know what it is, shout it out. But if you don't, you should probably play more games. But this is a level in Counter-Strike, and this is an area where there is it's just like a tunnel, right? And something very interesting about it is it's such a small little thing. It's just a tunnel. It's just going from one place to the other. We're like, what's the big deal about this, right? Or even like, you know, you're seeing other areas. It's like, oh, it's just a ramp. It's just a thing, right? Like what's so important about all this, right? The things that level designers do is that they create an experience for the player, right? Because they need to create levels that are engaging, that are playable, that, you know, create some sort of dynamic between one player versus the next, right? One player versus either the computer, another player, or so on and so forth, right? So when we're looking at these things, you want to not just understand like, oh, hey, there's a box there. What is that box doing, right? Because older games are actually really nice about this, because this is Uncharted, right? So this is not new, but a newer-ish game that when we're looking at this, it's like, okay, you see this kind of gray box that he's on, so he's clearly able to stand on it. And then you see like some of these kind of more green platforms and stuff, which probably means something, right? If it's green, and there's also one back there, right? In the back. But this isn't actually how the game looks, right? When you play the game, it looks, you know, real, or, you know, quote unquote real for the time. And, you know, it looks very good, right? They surface everything, they model everything. They do what they need to do to make that look like not like this, right? But old games are cool because this is, it's like probably the blockout with like, you know, stone brick textures applied. Like it's almost a 1-for-1, because this is all they had to work with, right? They like I guess the engines and everything just weren't strong at all. So it was literally a gray blockout, like similar to something like these, or maybe not. These are probably more complicated than what they're getting, but you know, gray blockouts like these, and they just put like a stone texture on it because that's all they had. So the cool part about older games is that you get to see like how it actually works, because sometimes like this, an example like this, where this is what you see as the game blockout. You don't actually see this. You'll see something that resembles it pretty closely, but you might not be able to kind of pick apart everything you're seeing right off the bat, right? But with old game ones, you can tell what's a kind of like, you know, a thing that you're supposed to crouch under, things that, you know, are supposed to block things, right? There's like vision obstruction type things. There's different levels in terms of like how like different grounds that people can be on, like high ground, low ground, right? Stuff like that. Interaction points, so on and so forth. So old games are really good for that. So if you're ever playing an old game, right, look around and see like, why does it feel like I'm dying in this spot? Like, you ever play that? Like when I was a kid, I sucked at Counter-Strike, right? I was really bad, right? As every 10-year-old probably was / still is, right? But there are certain spots that you're always going to die at, and you eventually kind of start learning that. You're like, oh yeah, every time I go in this tunnel, I get shot every single time, right? And you're like, why is that? Well, it's because they literally want that to happen, right? And so when you're playing a game, right here, this is some random map, but let me bring this in. Oops, there it is. These photos aren't mine, by the way. I just Googled a bunch of stuff, right? Maybe like 30 minutes to an hour worth of Googling. So, you know, really not that crazy. But the whole idea was, you know, when you see a game like this, there's areas that we're supposed to spawn into, right? You know, team spawn or whatever, right? And then there's like clash areas where, and if you can see it, they're all really small and narrow, and there's usually one side versus the other. There's usually two types of entrances, right? And there's you know, places where people are kind of funneled into this area, right? And that's because, and if you actually pay attention to where all of them are, right? They're all in the middle, because there's one side, like this is CT spawn, counter-terrorist spawn, this is terrorist spawn, right? This is clearly a Counter-Strike map, right? But you're looking at this, they're all about halfway, right? Some a little below, some a little bit above. But the whole point is, these are just arenas, right? These are just, this is one side versus the next. And as you're running around the map, you know, you kind of enter that enemy territory area, right? But to get to that, there's little funnel points that if everyone was running at the same speed, which they usually can, right? You will probably hit that midsection about the same time, right? And so when they design this, they make it so those areas kind of provide certain benefits versus certain drawbacks, right? If you're in the terrorist area, right, or this, you know, team B or whatever, there's certain, I guess, benefits from entering, like this map right here, this side. There's certain benefits to entering this side versus this side, because as you can tell, there's a ramp right here that probably goes up from what I'm seeing. And you can see a ledge right there that's looking right down at them, right? Let's say you won this clash. Okay, cool. You made it through. And now we're running into this area, which is you're officially in the kind of terrorist side. You're in the other team's side, right? And so there's a ledge looking this way, right? And as we know from Star Wars, right, if you have the high ground, generally speaking, you're probably going to win, right? You know, that's the idea. That's the notion, because for me to get to this guy, if there's a guy standing right there, I have to run around this thing. You know, you can obviously shoot him, but you know, it's a lot easier for them to shoot you, because they get to shoot you this whole trip, and you know what I mean? Before you can even get to the next area. And so this is, you know, the idea of games, right? And it's vice versa, right? Depending on where our teams are kind of starting, right? There's certain ideas that are kind of, you know, permeating through these levels. They make this so it's harder to kind of get to the other side, because if it's easy, I mean, it's not a fun game, right? So with that in mind, right, what are we actually looking at here? Why does this matter, right? Because this is just a field, right? It's a one side, like, you know, think sports, right? It's one side versus the next. And as you're kind of playing these games, you want to start paying attention to those things, because this is how we actually design as well, right? As a level designer, you're kind of placing things in certain spots. You're looking for certain eye lines. You're looking for, you know, certain kind of trajectories that you want the player to go through. As designers, we don't really have to know it as much, right? We don't have to like actually, I guess, understand every single thing that they do, but there are things, you know, like just like in this tunnel here, you cannot move them. there's a sort of bunker-esque situation going on with these crates, right? Because when you're running down this hall and you see somebody, you can run to the right and hide behind one of these, or you can hide behind it and wait as someone crosses, right? And so you really can't move them as concept designers, right? We don't really have that much say when it comes to how it goes about how we go about designing this level, because it's not really our job and we're not really paid to do those things. There are things that we can suggest, right? But at the end of the day, what I want to show you here is that you want to respect the blockout that they gave you. Sometimes you can say things, or, obviously you can, it's a team effort, so you can usually say something. But you got to remember, it's kind of like, some other job coming up to concept art saying, oh, hey, this is how you paint this better, or this is how you change things. It's not that they're right or wrong. It's just probably not the smartest thing to do, right? Especially if they are the experts at what they do. We want to trust our team, trust our other, other team members in production, that they know what they're doing, right? So that's just kind of like what I wanted to talk about here. It's a lot of like just understanding, like there's, if you got a block out like this, clearly that green kind of section right there means something. Whether it's going to collapse right when he walks on it, right? Because like, I don't know this level, I don't know exactly how this is played out, but you have a guy, he's standing here on this kind of gridded box, right? And it looks like he's probably going to be okay. There's nothing really happening here. All we know is he can walk on that because he's currently walking on it, right? And then you see this green one over here, and you see the same colored one over there. And what we really want to understand is, when I see this, green doesn't mean a standable surface, right? Or I guess it doesn't always mean a standable surface, because also this just gray blockout also means a standing surface. So there's something different about it, right? And my bet is when you jump over there, it's probably going to collapse, right? You have a certain amount of time to kind of run across, whatever it is. You can't stay there, right? I don't know if that's 100% true, but that's the idea. When you see these blockouts, right? When you see things like this, like for example, you see this blockout here, you have these people, you have these boats, and then you have the yellow kind of sections here, and it's a bunch of ledges and a bunch of like bars. Chances are you're climbing on that, right? Chances are you can grab that ledge. It's a grabbable ledge. And so we just want to understand, like, what the hell are we looking at? Because sometimes, like, this is actually, I would say, a higher level like blockout than I'm even used to getting, right? Because when I get a blockout, it's like this, and it wouldn't even have that fountain in the middle, right? They would have, it'd be, some stairs. It'll be just gray box with textured, dimensions on it, just to kind of give us an idea of how big things need to be. But from there, it really does just look like that, right? And our job as concept artists is to make this look good, right? But preserving the function that they've already established, because they've mapped it out, right? They know how long it takes to walk from one section to the next, how long it's going to take you to run through, what are the different eye lines, right? Because if you're standing, like, let's bring this into Photoshop here. Sorry, it's kind of crunchy, but if you're somebody here, right? And let's say you're running into the enemy territory, right? Why is that so gray? Anyway, if you're standing here, you need to run, like maybe up the stairs that way or whatever. There's a person right there, or maybe you even need to run that way, right? There's a person, or there can be a person right there, and they have basically advantage in this entire situation, right? So chances are you're going towards an enemy's side, right? And so this is just like what I was talking about earlier with the map, where, when you see this, there's an advantage here. There's an eye line. Once you exit this clash, right? There's an eye line that the, team B has that team A doesn't have. And because they need to be in an advantage here versus, the other team, right? And so when I design this, I have domain over all of this, right? I can change that to whatever I want, right? I can't like bring it up super high. I can sometimes bring it up a little bit higher, right? But I can't like fully change it, right? We can't just be like, oh, fuck it, we'll just change it to whatever. There's a general theme. Like, we know the theme that's happening in the scene. Maybe it's a castle, maybe it's a, whatever the project is. We should technically already know that, right? But There are points like this level right here, this upper level, this mid level, these stairs, and then the way the eye line kind of works in these scenes, right? Or in this scene, like if someone was standing here, right? What they can actually see, right? Because there's a wall right here. So maybe like, you know, from here over all this over there doesn't actually matter. Not that it doesn't matter. It's more of a, you're kind of in the safe zone. As soon as you poke your head out, there's probably somebody waiting, right? And these are kind of gameplay elements that actually make it fun, because if you can just run through and it's like nothing happens, I mean, shit, nothing happens. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not really that important. But, you know, if we have some sort of advantage situation, right, it can be a little more fun. It's more challenging, which is more fun, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Let me read some of the comments. So how much input concept artists have over a level blockout? Because I think most concept artists just receive a blockout and make an art pass on it. Oh yeah, exactly. So, you know, we don't really have that much say, right? Because this is a lot of the earlier development, right? And this might even be developed before we even like are on the project. Sometimes they already have the blockout. Not always, but you know. But sometimes, you know, we just get a block out and then they kind of tell us what the general things are. We do have some leeway. There are things that they can change. It's not like it's 100% inflexible, but you don't want to you don't want to undo decisions that somebody else has already made, because this level block out, it's not just like some dude did it and sent it to you, right? This is like, you know, a whole team of level designers had to do this. And then some game director or somebody higher up had to approve it. So it's already been through the chain of command. So the chances of us actually changing things really doesn't happen that often. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but you know, there's a design to the way that pipeline works. And it's usually way before us, because we don't get anything that hasn't been approved, or at the very least hasn't been mostly approved, right? So that's usually how that's going. Or Tony says, or that green is a climbing area. Yeah, I mean, you know, that could be it as well, right? It just depends on kind of what they tell you during these things. And we'll talk about this more in the set dressing kind of week. I think that's week 2, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. Yeah, week 2. So once we see like, you know, things like, where was that at? Things like this, right? Where, you know, now we understand that, okay, cool. There's some sort of ledge here, whether we can run on it or climb on it. There's a language that needs to be established, right? Same thing with, where was it at? This one here, right? You know, when you play a game and you just like know that you're supposed to grab that, or you're able to like do something with that thing, right? Like there's the barrels that you know you can smash, and then there's the barrels that are just kind of stuck in place as set dressing. And for whatever reason, we as players, we just know that, you know, you can't move that one. Usually they're rendered a little bit different. There's some sort of like because it's an asset versus a background prop, right? There's a different, I don't want to say style, but a fidelity to it, right? Because it needs to like kind of smash on the ground and break. Older games have that a lot more. Newer games, not so much, just because of the difference in, I guess, processing power and all that stuff, right? Kind of like animation, like when you see, maybe not Western animation, especially like anime, right? You'll see a high fidelity painting background and then like a cell shaded character that actually moves. And you ever see those like those animations where there's like the player's like standing on something, and then, you know, the bad guy like throws some sort of bomb or like blasts the ground or whatever, and the spot that's supposed to crack or break open, it's always like animated in a cell shaded way, and it always looks kind of off. So you just kind of automatically know, it's like, oh yeah, it's supposed to animate there. We haven't seen it yet, but you know, the ground is about to crack kind of idea. Obviously, you know, better animation studios do that a lot less, but it is a thing still, right? Because they can't make the painting move like that always, right? So it's the same thing here. When I see a ledge that I'm able to grab, it's probably because the game has trained me in that tutorial section to see this type of ledge, and you can always grab those, or the game will kind of teach you as it kind of goes, right? So just little things like that, but we'll talk about that in the set dressing side. But for now, right, I just kind of want to just walk through some of these images, right? We're just looking at it, and like as you play, don't just think think of this as like, oh, it's just a tunnel or whatever, right? Think about what kind of interactions would happen in this tunnel, right? Same here, right? You're walking through the door, right? And this is probably like, we're just looking at literally a cracked open door, right? There's an archway, and then we're in the viewpoint of a sniper, right? So he's probably just sitting there waiting. And I can probably bet that whatever side that this character's on is probably his territory side, right? And through that door is through, going towards the other territory side, right? And the reason I know this is because the person coming through the door is always at a disadvantage because he can't see what's around him. He can't see because it's barely cracked. He can't see like all the way around. And now we literally just have people waiting, right? Waiting and camping and watching and waiting for a dude, right? And so when you see this, it's not just a door. It's a moment of ambush or some sort of clash point for some sort of gameplay mechanic, right? We covered this, right? Ledges and stuff that you can climb on. And it's cool because you can see the ledges here on the side of this block, on this kind of side wall here. And you see some of these there, but you don't see it on like the side of the pier here. You don't see it on these sides. And there's something that we'll talk about during the set dressing side, but there's things that we can do to make sure that the audience isn't confused when they see those things, right? Because that's the main idea behind all this. There's some crates, like if you ever played like some, RPG games, stuff like that, there's some crates that you can grab, you can jump on, you can interact with, you can do things with. And there's some that just aren't really, you can't really jump onto them, right? You can't really do things with them. And for whatever reason, we always know they never look the same. There's always something different about them. Very similar to kind of what we're seeing here. You see this kind of greenish crate with that yellow stripe on it, or yellow caution strip on it. In the back there, you see those wooden crates. There's a difference between them. There's obviously a size difference, but there's also like, playability differences that we kind of want to understand, right? Looking at this, it's not just some interior, right? There's a clear advantage between one side versus the next, right? Whether we know it or not, that's what's being created because that's what the level designers do, right? There's an entrance or some sort of door back there from one section to the next. That was probably some sort of clash point, right? And then we're getting into maybe one team's base, right? And I can bet you that this is probably an area where we're supposed to be, right? We're supposed to do something here, right? Because there's these big kind of containers here that block, I guess, a certain amount of view from people entering that door, right? So they're going to have to walk all the way around to then see maybe somebody that's on that side. I don't truly know that, but it is something that you can kind of just tell by looking at it, right? Same here. We talked about this a second ago. Or even seeing this where, I've gotten gray blockouts where like, cool, there's places that we can walk, right? There's the purple kind of road pattern-ish thing, right? And then there's areas like this where it is flat, right? There's a lot of like flat ground that is, maybe accessible, even for like if you jumped off this ledge, right? But we're not supposed to be able to walk over there. And what we need to do is make sure the player understands that, right? Our job as designers is to make sure that this grass plane right here or whatever it's going to be is different from this dirt road texture, right? Because the dirt road means you can walk on it and that's the rules that we've set up. And then, you see like some sort of grass or water or ground that's different from the ground that you're on and you automatically know, hey, I'm not supposed to be there, right? So that's kind of what we're doing, right? Same thing here, right? You see, we'll get like, it's funny. Like it's just dumb mountain blockouts and, we're fully capable of doing this. This is basic Blender stuff, but the idea is there, right? The thinking, the understanding is what we need to do, right? Or same here, right? There's this image of basically a player next to some things, right? In this case, right, you have two different types of obstructions, I guess. One that she can she has to kneel behind because if she's standing there, then she probably will be visible, right? So just to kneel behind it versus something that she can actually stand behind. And when we design this, we have to keep that in mind. We can't change the heights. We can't change anything about it. What we have to do is make sure that we just represent it and make sure that the audience knows what each one of these means, right? Sorry, my cat's going crazy right now. His mom's doing something and he doesn't like that. So But yeah, or even like this, right? We see this, this is where you need to plant the bomb or do whatever you need to do, right? And, you probably need to plant it like right there, right? And it's cool because you can actually see the sight points, right? Like whenever, there's different places that you're going to enter through. There's this door in the back and this door in the back right, or back left and back right. And as soon as you enter, you can see that something is there, right? Let's say this was like Counter-Strike. I mean, it is Counter-Strike. But you see the bomb there, it's been planted. Cool, right? So now I need to run and defuse it or whatever, or even just plant the bomb there. But then there's these barricades here, right? There's these boxes that are strategically placed where they need to be to say, hey, let's say one of the terrorist groups, right, put a bomb there. You can just hide behind this and wait for the guy to show up. So now the disadvantage is there, right, for the people that need to disarm this place, right? Little things like that. Whenever I see, blocks, you have to remember that somebody planned this, somebody thought about this. Same with all these, and you don't want to really change it, right? Something that happens as students a lot is that when we get an assignment, we get a painting or whatever, or get some sort of like parameter or rough thumbnail or whatever, right? We usually, I guess, feel like we can change a lot of things, right? There's a level of like, if you've never worked in production before, you can always kind of, I didn't really like that. Let me redo it. Let me change it. Let me do something else. That happens all the time. And as a student, it's not that big a deal, right? Just because, you're a student. It's not real at the end of the day, right? But in production, you have to know what you can and can't change. I can probably change what type of like trim pattern and like how the railing kind of looks, and it might not even need to be solid in a lot of instances, right? But there does need to be some sort of barrier there or some sort of ledge that kind of makes it so you can't just walk off the side, right? And then this crate here, I can't move it 3 or 4 feet left or right for the composition. It has to be where it needs to be because somebody planned that, somebody approved that, right? Or even same here, right? This is it's a level in Counter-Strike, right? I played this one a lot. And it's just like just an arena. You're just running around shooting people. But it's cool because, you just grab a gun and you start running, right? And this is just the core mechanic of there's a couple barricades you can get behind, and then it's just a big like intersection contact point, right? There's just gonna be a fight right here and then here and there, right? And we just know that. And it's a fun world to play. But whenever we're designing this, we have to kind of give, I guess, the player, I guess, things to kind of latch onto when they're playing this game, right? They have to know what they can crouch behind, right? Just like what we're doing here. When we set up this world, there's things that they can crouch behind, and there's things that they don't need to crouch behind, and they have to kind of know that difference, right? Because a lot of times when you're looking at this wall right here, you can get shot through, but this one probably not, right? Or shot over, right? If you're standing versus the other one, see how it's kind of slanted a little bit, things like that. And we just kind of have to like dissect those things, right? I don't want to go into like every single detail as to what level design truly is. We do need to get started here. But what we do need to understand is there are things in place that people have designed and approved, and there's reasons for things to look a certain way. Now, our job is to make sure we represent that accurately, right? Because if we change it, then we're changing the whole dynamic at that level. So, does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense. Sorry, I'm a little gummy. My allergies have been going crazy. All right. So, with that in mind, let's start. Let's start the project. So in this case, I'm going to be doing a first-person shooter for everybody watching, everybody like participating. Right? You could do whatever you want. Right? Obviously, there's mechanics and stuff that are different according to each type of gameplay, right? If you're playing some sort of RPG, that's different from a first-person shooter versus MMOs, so on and so forth, right? Or even like 2D side scrollers. If you're interested in that, there's puzzle mechanics there. There's things that you need to understand. So when you're doing these things, all I really want to know, right? When we kind of like whenever I start this, all I'm really trying to know ahead of time is what type of area are we in, right? Because if I look at this map again, Should I just close it too? All I have to know is, are we in a clash area? Are we in like a spawn area? You know what I mean? And that's really about it, right? It's like what things are supposed to happen? What things are supposed to happen here, right? Just like when we're looking at this area right there, it's, you know, what's supposed to go down, right? Is there some sort of advantage or disadvantage according to what side you're entering and exiting in, right? And so when you do this, just know what that is. We can talk about theme and design a little bit later, which I'll be talking about next week, right? I'm just going to be doing some gray blocks and kind of seeing how all this turns out. But when you do this, you want to know exactly what's supposed to happen, right? Is this a boss arena, right? Is there some sort of advantage to being on a higher level, right? There's a if you ever play Kingdom Hearts, right? There's the Colosseum area, and there's the flat kind of ground that you're fighting in, but then there's also the bleachers, right? And in some levels, you can actually access those bleachers, and guess what? It usually matters, right? There's usually some sort of thing that makes it so you can hit the target better, or you can avoid things, or whatever it is. When that arena changes, right, from a flat kind of ground plane into a flat ground plane with two levels, right? There's the bleacher side, which is a little bit higher that you jump onto, and there's the flat ground plane. There's usually a reason for that. Don't just ignore it, right? Use it, usually including that makes it so you can play the level better, right? Same thing here. So I'm going to do some sort of clash area. I'm probably going to do something like this, and then it has like one room per side, right? There's probably going to be, some sort of idea according to both areas, right? It's gonna be a kind of mirrored type of situation, right? Because the advantage should shift as you go to this side, right? The counter-terrorist side in this case, right? It has the same actual block, almost the same blockout, right? It's generally the same thing. There's probably something to do, right? It's kind of hard to see, but there's like a staircase right there. So there's probably some sort of advantage to being on this side versus this side, right? Same thing from this side to this side. And so when I design this, I'm going to be kind of creating something like this blockout right here, right? But yeah, so that's kind of what I'm going to be doing. Let's see. How should I start this? I'm going to jump into Blender just as a heads up, and we'll kind of get going. This would be pretty base kind of Blender kind of day, right? It's just, if you can do a block, you can do this, right? I'm just going to create a ground plane right now. And I'm going to be 100% honest with everybody here. I have no idea what I'm about to do. Like, I kind of know. Like, yeah, I just talked about it, but I have no idea how this is going to turn out. So, we will see. Boom. Probably something like that. Oops, not like that. Scale Y. Something like that. I'm going to grab this block. And right now, all I'm doing is just kind of like, I'm just putting a ground plane so I kind of see how things are going. I'm probably going to have to delete that in a second, or not a second, towards later, just so I kind of have a better idea of what's happening. But for now, that's what I'm doing. And right now, I know this block is 6 feet tall, and I'm going to kind of build to that scale, right? Average male, right? Or I guess in some countries, it's average. I'm going to kind of build to that scale. So, just put a person in there just so we know how tall something is, right? I'm going to scale this up, put this on the ground plane. That's like really high. Those are really high ceilings, right? But if you take this and bring this down, right? Maybe kind of make some sort of hallway. How tall are hallways, right? They're probably like, I won't say double us, but a little bit taller than that, right? I don't know, maybe. Let's see. Boom, boom. And this is like a pretty big area, right? Because that's wide opposed to like how big that person is, right? Let me grab my guy. Boom. So looking at that, that's pretty big. So I probably want something that's probably a little more narrow, right? So scale X, because I want this to be some sort of like funnel choke point. I'm going to kind of delete some faces here just so we have something to work with. P selection. There you go. So we're kind of just seeing it, right? It's pretty, I'm gonna add some, add a modifier so I can kind of visibly see it as I'm on that flatter side plane. Generate, solidify, just a little bit. Go the other way. There we go. So pretty easy, right? Nothing really that crazy. That's actually kind of where I'd want it, to be real with you. All right, at this point, right, let's start making things oops, longer.
Can I have a question? Are you currently in mind for a multiplayer map or a single player map?
It's a multiplayer map. So this is going to be a first-person shooter. I'm just going to be making some sort of combat area, right, where people can kind of, they'll essentially run into this thing, right, like as we're going, you're kind of. And the idea is they're going to have to clash in here, right? The whole point is when they go in, there is a certain amount of time that it takes for them to run through, and there's a certain amount of advantage / disadvantage they will or won't have, right? And that's really all I'm doing. I'm trying to keep it super simple so we kind of know how I'm going about this, right? But for everybody, that's a great question. You know, it's something where you want to know, like, what are we supposed, like, what's happening here, right? What's the kind of gameplay element, right? Is it a puzzle? Is it a combat situation? Is it a, you know, some sort of thing that's supposed to happen here? Every level has a reason, right? From there, you start creating the different scenarios that you would kind of run into, right? In this case, it's a small condensed area that, you know, I need some sort of areas where people can kind of hide behind or bunker behind, right? And I need areas that people can kind of essentially get shot in, right? It's like there's a certain amount of like clashing that needs to happen in this location. So boom, something like that, right? And you know, I'm probably going to keep it super simple. It's something that I like doing. I don't really do blockouts that often. So, but what I will say is something I like doing often is going into like my first person kind of fly through mode, right? And if you ever do it, it's shift tilde, right? And you can kind of like, you know, fly through. What you can do is at the bottom of the screen here, you'll see some like some short keys. I'll kind of click right here, where it says change frame, pan view, dope sheet, all this stuff, right? That's going to change in a second once I go into fly through mode. You'll see at the bottom toggle gravity, which is tab, and then now you can kind of run through your location, right? And what you want to do sometimes is check this out. What we did at Sony for one of the maps we were designing, he had us like our level designer said, "Hey, can you run through this level quick and just count how long it takes? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? 5 seconds. You know, sometimes that's a long time, sometimes that's not enough, right? And obviously, there's some like mechanics behind that, and there's some probably guidelines that he has, but you know, there are things that we want to understand that there is a amount of time, because if you did this and you ran through it for a minute, shit, that's gonna take forever, right? You know, it's something where it's like you're probably running through this tunnel for too long, right? But maybe 10 seconds, maybe a little bit longer, right? That might be a little more interesting. I don't know, right? Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? But the whole point is, you know, the amount of time it takes you to kind of run through this place is important, right? And you really want to understand that, right? So, boom, I'm gonna do this, set origin geometry, and put this back in the middle. There you go. Easy peasy. Actually, what I'm gonna do is this. Nah, it's fine the way it is. Just eyeball it. Screw it. Cool. Sick, right? So I'm gonna do that again. I'm gonna kind of get in here, fly through, boom. I'll be careful though. If you turn on geometry or turn on, gravity outside, you're just gonna fall through, right? So just don't do that. But you can also right click as well. So I'm on my fly through mode right now, right? And if like wherever I started, right? If you like if I'm over here, right, I start falling through, right? If I click tab, and you know, gravity basically kicks in, and there's nothing to stop me. If you right click, right, it'll just repop you back to where you were, right? Because if you if you go here, and then you you're going through, and if you left click, it just solidifies where you're at. So you're gonna solidify yourself way down under or whatever. But the whole idea is just don't mess that up. I don't say don't mess it up, but you know, those are things that can happen and you might not know why. So, you know, we're just kind of running through and it shouldn't take that long. It's just a hallway. And so this kind of opens up into the next area, right? So now I have one location in the middle, right? This is kind of where we're at. And then I'm going to start just making stuff for the sides, right? So what does it look like? Like what do I need to happen for this thing to, you know, just be playable at this point, right? So in this case, I'm going to go back to my box select, tap that, scale this up so I don't have to worry about it so much. I usually scale it pretty big. So just so it's like, you don't have to worry about falling off so much, right? But you know, you do you. And that's about it, right? At this point, we're just gonna start creating stuff. I'll show you kind of how we go about, like, I guess what we select, like what we do with all this stuff in a bit. But for now, you know, we can kind of start chatting about stuff. So if you guys have things you want to talk about, definitely bring it up. But for now, I'm just gonna be kind of rolling at this point. So let's see. Let's go cube. How's it going, guys? How's life? How goes the things?
Not too shabby.
Nice. Nice. We got Riley. Life's not too shabby. I dig it.
It's a decent review.
Nice. Boom. Some sort of ramp here. So I was thinking like, oh, what if they just run in? And this is very crude, right? This is like just stupid how simple all this is, right? But what I want to do here is all I'm trying to do is just make it so when you're in here, right? It is kind of hard to see. Like you're going down a level, right? And it could be stairs, it could be whatever. But the whole point is we're going from one level to the next, right? You're gonna, you know, walk out here and then you have to go up a little bit. And this is kind of what we're setting up here, right? Nothing crazy. I'm not saying I'm the best level designer in the world or even a level designer in a world, right? But what I am doing is just trying to figure out like how do I make this so it, you know, it's something that is something, right? Let's see, scale X. Yeah, is that X? There you go. Kind of start here. Start simple. And I'll fix all this in a bit. I'll fix everything that we need to know about it. But for now, right, it's going okay. Let's see. Probably scale this down a little bit. So what I did first, I had that cube, right? And I just wanted to kind of figure out what that looked like. Because now, like if it's like a slope or something, like a ramp, right? It can be a little longer, but if it's like stairs, maybe it can be a little bit shorter, right? You're kind of like walking into this section. And then from here, right, then we can just kind of level that out, make sure that there is a, I guess, some sort of, like imagine like running into a subway kind of platform or a metro kind of station type of thing, right? Where you run down these steps and you go into this kind of tunnel area, right? It could be like the kind of same idea. So nothing really that crazy, but the same idea is when I look, right, it's hard to kind of see what's up here, right? Because I don't want like the advantage, right? When I exit out of here, you know, you want to look up and then, oh shit, there's a guy there. You can get shot, right? Or you might not even see him sometimes. Right? You just kind of run up and maybe you kind of go sideways, right? We're moving kind of quick. But the whole point is, right, when I'm doing this, I am trying to think about some of those ideas, right? And I'll mirror all this to the other side later. We'll focus on one side right now. Paya says, interesting how the FPS game changes the kind of area. Apex or Overwatch wouldn't have something like this. I guarantee they have something like this. We might not always pick it up, but let's see. Overwatch level map. There's always things like that. There's always. Because other than that, like, otherwise, you just get an open field. Otherwise, you just get a straight up, like, square. You know what I mean? There's always something. Let's see. Looks like a drawing of a thing. I don't play Overwatch, so I don't even know if this is a true level or not. but I guarantee it is. Like, I mean, like there's no there like otherwise. Like, what are we even playing, right? Well, what's the point? Right, even looking at like this level here, right? Let's see. Hold up. Let's see. Overwatch level. Not those levels. Map. Let's go to map. Yeah. And this is actually probably some things that I'd want to talk about later, right? This wall right here, that's a little weird. I might add. You know what I'm saying? That's a little bit odd. It's like, why is that there? It's probably some sort of thing you can hide behind to run around, right? Because looking at this level alone, right? Just this one picture. Control new, create, V, right? There's probably some sort of center here that you can get shot at from multiple different areas. And there's probably another platform over here. If you run through that, you probably die, right? But if you run around, a lot harder to get shot at. You know what I mean? And it's probably, you know, the way you would ideally operate in this level, right? You can just go through there, right? You know, if it's empty or whatever. But probably not ideal to be there, right? And I'm not saying that's the correct way to do this, right? But the whole idea is every game does this. Whether it's a 2D side scroller or even 2D side scroller or even like you know, a 3D kind of arena, right? There's always something, you know, like the if you don't have a level design, right, there's really nothing fun about it. You know what I'm saying? So all right. So just as a heads up, this is just like usual, right? This is going to take a while for me to kind of plan out, right? So this today's kind of session is mostly about us just explaining what's happening, right? I don't exactly know how all this is going to go, but what I do know is there are just some things that we need to kind of like I'm trying to figure the things out, and you can kind of draw some stuff. You can do whatever you need to do. Sometimes I'll like, you know, use grease pencil or whatever to kind of draw. Other times I'll just, you know, just kind of wing it and build it, right? So not that I ever do this, but oftentimes we'll do a blockout or something for an area, right? And there are some, like, you do want to at least try, right? There is something where, as concept artists, specifically, like for people that I guess when they design in this, like design like for an area or whatever, right? There is a level of you have to at least put in the effort of, like, you know, when you design a location, you got to give them something, right? Even though we're not, you know, specifically, I guess tasked to level design, right? There are things that you want to kind of keep in mind. You know what I'm saying? Like, whenever I create a environment piece for somebody, for a client, right, or something, I'll always, at the very least, think a little bit about some of those things, right? I'm not the level designer that they're gonna probably hire or do something with, right? But I am the person that's designing this level, and there has to be something that's like, okay, they can kind of hide behind these things, they can kind of get shot at here, and then there'll be somebody that kind of like figures that out if it hasn't already been figured out, right? We don't just kind of go in blind when it comes to a lot of this stuff, right? So what I'm doing here, right? I'm just trying to think like, oh, hey, what if there's a, you can either go down the tunnel or you can go like around, right? Like you can, you know, let's say right here, you can either go down this way and run through, or you can go around and over or something like that. And maybe this kind of under section has something to it, but maybe this upper section is, let's say, a little bit more scary. You know what I mean? Maybe there's something up with it. Maybe there's the whole idea would be, oh, maybe it's, I guess it's a more of a clash point down here. I guess quote unquote safer, right? But maybe up here you're more vulnerable. You're more like exposed to different things, and you know, there's like, I guess, the ability to kind of get shot from multiple angles. Versus down here, you at least have to like, you have like bunkers and things you can kind of fight through. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna kind of focus inside a little more though. We're gonna have like a little bit of understanding of that outside, but for now we're just trying to like just get some of this to look okay. So we know that in Blender, right? A cube is 6 feet, right? So I like to kind of measure things off that way. If you're standing behind something like this, or if you have a 6-foot cube and you have a 6-foot character, standing behind it, you'll probably be safe, right? So if you change that height or change all of it to 3 feet, right? Then you kind of create the situation where, you know, they have to kind of crouch, right? And maybe that's kind of what I want, because if they stand through, if they just go through this level, then probably not that safe. But if they are, you know, they're kind of running through this area, and they, you know, I guess crouch behind things, maybe they're a little more safe. You know what I mean? So let's see. I'm gonna hide this real quick, just so I can see that top section just a little bit. Boom. Hey guys, you guys have any questions? There's some things that I'd want to talk about, but for now we can just chat. We can just do things.
Yeah, when I said that box thing, like for Overwatch, it would like there wouldn't be like a tunnel thing like this, or they would have some verticality to it, or like some holes on the side. There's never like just one like closed off choke point.
Well,
That's what I meant to say.
Well, that's the thing, right? And this is where we'll talk about this next week a little bit more. There's it might not be a tunnel, right? And this is actually well, I'm gonna jump ahead just a little bit when I say some of these things. But even though there's a wall right here, right? Let's say you're running through this tunnel, you know, quote unquote tunnel, right? Even though there is walls right there, that doesn't actually mean the concept art needs to represent walls, right? It just, all we're saying is that the player can't go through this section, right? They have, the only way they can go is straight through, right? So when we're doing this, all you have to remember is it's not a wall in particular. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, right? Sometimes it's like, it's obvious that it needs to be a building, right? But a lot of times the wall is just a metaphor, right? Just like in life, right? Yeah. But the whole idea is, it's like, oh yeah, it's a ledge that you can't jump over, or it's some sort of barrier, right? Because sometimes like you'll do there's like zombie games or something where you know, there'll be like some doors that you can run through, but then there's other doors that have like things kind of blocking it, or you know, like barricades in front, or there's like little planks of wood that kind of cut it off from, you know, so you know you can't go to that side, right? It's the same idea here. It doesn't have to be walls. It just represents some sort of barricade that we're not allowed to go through. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Let's see. Let's bring this into here. Let's do that. I'm gonna make another few to put one on that side, right? Easy. And so all we have to do is figure out like, okay, if this is some sort of clash area, right? We just have to know that, okay, there is some sort of, I guess, situation that needs to happen. There's some sort of thing, right? So let's see, what else we got here? What else do I need? Level design, right? Levels. Maybe that's like stairs. Like right now, I'm just trying to figure out like, what is the point of this like a lot of these pieces, right? There's a lot of like things where you can kind of like, I don't know, just start kind of assigning meaning to, right? We haven't gotten to the set dressing side, so I don't want to talk too much about what I have planned for this, but there is a level of like, I have to kind of know what I'm doing before we, I guess, truly kind of get into it. You know what I'm saying? But let's figure that out when that comes. Let's see. Boom, boom. I'm gonna grab that edge there. My OCD's kicking in. I have to like line up some of these pieces. Just like what I was saying before, where I just kind of put some blocks down just to kind of make it feel like, you know, it's like kind of something. Right now, like now that I actually have something, now that we're actually kind of looking at something, it becomes imperative that I'm like, okay, well, this needs this. I need to represent this, or I need to kind of connect some of these pieces because, you know, then the transitions actually look a little bit weird. But now you can kind of see that those ideas kind of coming in a little bit better, right? There's a staircase, there's some sort of platform thing, maybe there's some sort of railing right here, right? I won't say railing, but some sort of barrier that they cannot pass, right? Boom. Maybe it starts over. Actually, no, let's start right here. We'll get to the details in a second. And this is kind of where, like, we're just messing around, just seeing what happens, you know? Maybe I'll extend that further, like there. All right, I need my guy again. Where's my guy? Oh, there he is. Put one up. Yeah. So now I know, right? That's a 6 foot kind of like barrier, right? It's probably not as high as that needs to be. So I'm gonna make that a little bit shorter just to kind of give us like, where's railings at? Usually like your waist level, right? Something like that. Grab these 2 walls, make them thinner. Right, and that could be anything, right? We can change that to whatever we need it to be. But we're just trying to make this work for now. And then maybe there's some sort of building back here. Mesh, cube, boom, scale. Yeah, we'll put it like right. Let's put it on this back wall right there. And maybe this can be like that transition to the next area, right? Maybe that next area is on the left side here or whatever. It'll come through. Maybe there's like a whole platform area here, and there's the whole combat area down there. And I want this building right here, or whatever this block ends up being, to be like some sort of vantage point, right? So now I'm gonna make another, oops, that's not what I want. Shift A, cube, make another one. Boom, boom, scale X, something like that. Pretty simple. And then tab. Something wide enough for a person to be on. So I'm gonna duplicate this guy, have him there, and have them right there. Oops, not that way. Something like that, right? Maybe there's some sort of like catwalk or something. Let's see. How high would that be? So our guy's right there. That's actually a good height. So I'll grab this top plane, drag that down. Now we know that there's some sort of ledge system right here, right? I don't know how he gets on there quite yet, but, you know, we'll figure that out. Maybe we want to take this out just a little bit further. Take this guy, drop him down. Right. Scale. Take this guy. Boom. Make that maybe not so whatever. Extrude. Bring that down. Stairs. Right. Super simple. And slowly you can kind of see me like just kind of thinking through this, right? It's a lot of like just little things of like, hey, how do I make this more fun? Because now, right, you get through this combat area, right? This section in the middle, right? There's this little bit of something where, you know, that you have to interact here, right? If you, let's say you miraculously got through, you're this guy, right? You're this guy right here, and you're just running through the level, right? Okay, cool. You survived for whatever miracle of a reason. Maybe you're pretty good at shooting games, right? And then you go up the stairs, boom, right? You're there. And then now you're at a disadvantage as soon as you entered, right? Because now you're technically in that enemy territory, right? Really nothing that crazy of a thing, but there's the understanding that this platform needs to be here. There's something here. There's a railing here, right? So now this person's standing here, right? Oops, let's try that like this. Let's say he was just waiting right there. You just wait for you to come up and just shoot you right as you walk up, right? There's so many disadvantages to this scene because now the eye line of our, let's say I'm standing right here, right? The eye line looking down is all of this, right? And then same thing, right? eye line looking here, you know, this would be kind of ceilinged off, right? But as someone walked right up the stairs, you'd see them walk by, right? Boom, you can shoot them right there. And these are just little things, not really that crazy of an idea. Not the blocking isn't really that special, right? But the whole point is, it is thought through, right? And maybe it's not the best level design. I'm not a level designer. Let me make sure I mention that a couple times so I don't get like called out for this. But there is an understanding of, hey, there's, you know, we have to kind of know some of these things, right? Because the distance between things, the placement of certain things, they all exist for a reason, right? So you really want to make sure that we respect the blockout that these designers make, because, you know, we have to do that, and that's the name of the game, right? Cool. All right, so that's really about it, right? In terms of, like, I'm gonna keep going on this, obviously, but right, it's gonna be a lot of, you know, just rinse and repeat. We're just gonna take these same ideas, do the same things that we've been doing, and start kind of rolling with it, right? So let's see. Boom. All right, I just want like something. I don't know what I'm gonna be doing with this, but we're rolling with it. You know what I mean? So let's drag that up. Maybe some sort of railing. Who knows? I wanted to make some sort of like sci-fi game though. I don't know what you guys are gonna do, but for me, I'm gonna do maybe like a sci-fi shooter or something. Anybody?
Neo Tokyo Subway. You could do that.
Neo Tokyo Subway, dude. That sounds sick, bro. What kind of guns they using? Man, Tony hit it on the mark. He was like, "Kenny, sci-fi, Japan, dude." He knows what I want.
Do it.
What are you doing? You had that school, right? You were doing that that school gym.
Yeah, the Last of Us. Yeah.
Yeah, man, you're getting too excited, man. You showed up 2 weeks early, and you're like, "Dude, I have the level." I was like, "What?" I was like, "Bro, we're still on color keys, man."
That's why I voted for level design.
True that. True that. All right.
I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about like what kind of things would be the most important to like kind of focus on or like stockpile in a portfolio to show that you're doing the kind of stuff that you would be doing in a job. Like you said, you wouldn't be doing the blockout really, but you kind of have to if you're making it up for yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly, right. And this is like I was saying for everybody else, right? Like, I never do this ever, right? It's always given to me, or at the very least, some semblance of an idea is given to us. But like Riley was just saying, you know, I mean, if you're not in production, I mean, chances are you're not getting one of these. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, what do you do? So the easiest thing to do is actually look up like level design gray box, right? All right, so you can oftentimes, right, just use the kind of layout that you kind of see, right? Obviously, you know, give credit to where it's due, ask if necessary. But, you know, a lot of the times we're not really taking any ideas here, right? We're just using it as like, you know, like there's no theme here. You know what I mean? It's just a door and some stairs and then like a ticket booth. You know what I'm saying? Like there's not really a lot going on here in terms of like theming and design, which is our side, right? Or, I mean, you can just make something really quickly, right? It doesn't really take that long. But yeah, you know, you can look up these things, level design, gray boxing, you can make your own. But the whole point is, you know, you want to understand what this area is about. When you see it, right, you have to look at it and be like, okay, so what's supposed to happen here? What kind of advantage/disadvantage does the characters have? What kind of path are they supposed to run? You know, what are some things that need to happen in this area to, you know, make this a relevant thing? You know what I mean? Like, because you can easily just like not do any of that, right? Like, because, you know, you can easily just like forget to like mention all those things. But you know, you want to say like, hey, this like, you know when they ask you if you've had an interview before, they always go, oh, so walk me through the process of what you were thinking about when you were doing this, right? And sometimes it's like, I just painted, I'll say it like that, but you know what I mean? Like a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, I looked up my references and then I got my form language and then kind of started. And that's a very basic answer. And it's not wrong with that, but it's nothing like right with it either. You know what I mean? But what you can say is, oh yeah, so I made this quick block out for this kind of arena map or this kind of like clash area or whatever. And I kind of want to represent these things. Like literally just a screenshot like this might do it. You know what I mean? You're like, hey, I just had this kind of area and this is kind of what I was thinking about. You're like, fucking dope, dude. Like that's awesome, and these are, this is it, right? And you just kind of do something like this, and then you give them the actual version with the same camera angle, right? Just make sure that whenever you do this, give them the block out that you made, right? And don't get like kit bash, for things from like kitbash3d.com or whatever, and throw it in and then be like, hey, this is my block. Don't do that. Don't. That's dumb. They might confuse that with other things, as well as it's just a waste of time. It's just too much memory. Just do blocks, right? Because this is the core idea. This is sketching. This is my shape placement. This is my general understanding. And then we're just going to go from there, right? Make a block out like this, and then turn this into whatever painting you need to do. So let's say I decided to go with this one, right? I set up my camera. I'm going to fly around like a G, right? Oh, there you go. And like, we'll probably go from this side because I need to see that bottom kind of thing. Right? Maybe it's something like this, right? Assuming this was the coolest angle you've ever seen, right? Maybe I'll set this to, where's my camera at? Boom. Set that to 25, right? And let's say this is like the coolest thing you've ever seen, and then just give them this render. This right here, right? Like that. If I click render right now, you send them that. And then the next shot, right? The next painting they see is the final realization of what this is, right? And you can show them like, oh yeah, you can highlight some of these, like add a material to it where it's like, oh, there's this red box here, right? So, I don't know. Let's go down. Let's pretend this light situation is not dumb as hell. Light. Sun, right? It's like, oh, there's a red box here. It means something, or these are people, there are things, right? You want to show them that you actually thought about this and actually know what these things represent, right? Oh, my game is a game where like you're kind of grappling everywhere and you can climb up walls. Show them what one of these walls actually looks like, right? Show them basically this right here, you know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, there's these areas that you can do, because chances are, for a lot of you listening, or a lot of you doing this, you're probably gonna make some sort of block out regardless, right? So you might as well actually figure it out. You might as well actually do something where you understand what it means. They're not gonna rate you on your level design skills, right? When they look at it, they'll be like, oh, that's not a realistic level. No, it's like they understand. I mean, it's got to be like kind of close. You know what I mean? It's more of a best attempt type of situation, right? Try your best, make it kind of make sense. But if you miss some core fundamental ideas that level designers know, not a big deal. You're not applying for their job, right? What you do want to know is, hey, I represented this ledge here, right, with this yellow kind of block, and then whenever I made the final painting, these are what those ledges look like. And then you can do another call out page, right? Where you're like, okay, cool. Well, this is that active ledge versus inactive ledge, right? Active ledge is something that you can grab onto. Inactive, something you cannot grab onto, right? And so, you show that, oh, this one is like a little more rendered or a little more whatever. This one is like cracking a lot or whatever. A lot of things like that. But the whole point is, when you're trying to show gameplay knowledge, or at the very least understanding of pipeline, you want to like spell it out in some sort of way, because when it comes down to viewing your portfolio, chances are you won't be there. You know what I'm saying? Chances are it's on your ArtStation and someone went to click on it, you sent it to somebody, you know what I mean? There's a whole litany of situations where you're not going to be present, and you just want to make sure that when they see this, they get it. Because when they see this, they're not thinking, wow, what a terrible render. You know what I mean? That's not what's going through their mind here. It's like, oh yeah, okay, I understand what's kind of happening here. And then they go from there, right? So for you, it's the same thing. Just make sure that your blockout, at the very least, like this blockout, I wouldn't show them this. I'd take it a lot further, but show them the core idea, and then you can kind of go from there, right? Make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I was also just kind of interested in, like, I was thinking about how sometimes you design, if you're designing for games, a lot of times doing an environment, it's, a lot of it can be about like the actual playable space as opposed to like a cinematic shot. And how much of like, figuring it out in 3D and making it look like well thought through like this, and then finding the camera angles that work to show off the space versus like trying to do a story moment or something like that.
Yeah,
just something that I haven't run into a lot with a lot of the classes and learning I've done.
Yeah, there's a bit of that, right? Where sometimes, like, you have to, for like, I'm a big proponent of this, right? But like showing, I guess like keyframes that tell story, that push the narrative, right? Because a lot of times, that's what a lot of people gravitate towards, right? Just being real with you, that's a lot of studios, a lot of people hiring, right? They do gravitate towards those ideas oftentimes, right? But yeah, oftentimes it's like, oh, I need to show that I understand what gameplay even is, right? So, like, how do we balance the two, right? And usually I try to do both, right? I'll try to do like at least one or two keyframes that like show a moment, like, because you want to sell people on the game, on the IP, or whatever it is, right? You want to tell them, hey, this is like this is what we're kind of doing, right? This is I guess the general story, right? You have this guy running through this place, shooting guns, whatever, right? It's the whole action moment. It's the thing that makes people like excited to play the game. But then as you go deeper into the space, right, I have a keyframe of a dude like kind of running through a hall, you know what I mean? Like maybe it's like this shot right here, right? And you're like, the guy running through, and then you see just a bunch of like, guns and stuff. You can't see the whole level, but you see the story, right? But then there's always that other shot where you're like, okay, cool, let me do a 3/4 view of this space, right? You're like, it's always like this, right? So, or, something like this. And they do drawovers, they do like, full on renderings because they have the model at this point, right? And then you go, oh yeah, so this is what I was trying to think of. I thought about like higher level, like upper level, like ground advantage. I thought about sight advantage. I thought about like turns and things. I thought about things that people are hiding behind, and you kind of mark those things in the blockout. This way, not only are you showing that you built a whole model, right? But you also, understand gameplay in some sort of way. It might not be perfect, right? But the whole point is you're not just showing them a grayscale version of the same thing that you had here, right? Because oftentimes I'll get keyframes where it's like this, and it's like cool, and then you have the guy hiding behind in the space or doing whatever he needs to do. But then we get a grayscale version, and it's like, oh, that's cool. So what are we seeing? Just a base blockout. It's like, well, I mean, I could have assumed that, But if you show them this, right? Oftentimes it's like, oh yeah, look how cool the space is. But there's no like thought behind it. So oftentimes it's not really like a real place it's not a designed place with gameplay function in mind. So you kind of want to do both, but just know when to do it. In the keyframe shot like this, not effective, right? Because you're in a weird angle to where you won't see much. You'll see what the character kind of sees, right? But then when you do that 3/4 view, which we should all, generally speaking, be doing, right? And if you have the model, because we probably model it out, just kind of mark some of those things. Just be like, oh yeah. You just put a red box around certain things, put yellow on certain areas, understand what those kind of mechanics are. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So project. I don't know if you talked about it on the stream. I think it might have been in the crit stream that you worked on with Dave for like the shooter one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for something like that, did he like model out the space as like a playable level, or was he just making keyframes and then kind of inventing the level within the painting?
So the way he did it was he blocked out the I guess the area, very similar to kind of what I'm doing here. Like when we started, we didn't have, because it was technically a fake project, right? It's literally what we were doing right now. But it was a fake project, but we did want to show that gameplay mechanic. So when we blocked it out, we kind of looked at it and kind of like, mapped out some of the areas that we're running through and so on and so forth. So it wasn't like a real thing because that project is technically a fake project, but there was the idea that we wanted to show some gameplay mechanics in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's like get the create a space that feels like a real game environment, playable like you're doing right now, and then using that creative eye later to like find the spots where you can make a keyframe.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because we making a keyframe is pretty easy. Not easy in an execution standpoint, but in a just an application standpoint, right? Where it's like just put a camera in there, right? And then have a dude doing a thing, right? It's like, oh, okay, cool. And then I put the ceiling back on. I might have deleted it. But anyway, you just put the ceiling back on, and you have some lights, you have smoke, you have fire, this and that going through the scene. And it's like, oh shit, But it's pretty easy. But then, like this shot, like you don't need all this stuff on the side, right? I'm gonna do the other side probably off stream, but you don't need to see everything. But the whole point is, I kind of know that there's an entrance to the into this section here. This is a whole kind of area, and then this kind of middle section is a whole area, and then I'm probably gonna have another one right there. That's a whole area, and that's all we're really looking for. You know what I mean?
Cool. Yeah, it makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, great question. It's a lot for everybody, right? Making a portfolio is fucking hard, right? Like, I don't know if you know, but it's hard as hell. And there's a lot of things that you need to show because they're like, for one, you don't know what company's going to hire you. So you kind of have to do a bunch of things. If you knew that one particular studio was going to pick you up, right? Yeah, you just do everything you can to aim yourself towards that. But that's not always the case because, it's not always that easy, right? It's you apply for like Riot, or whatever, and then you get Blizzard or something or whatever, you get something in a similar vein, but not the same place. But all these places have different ideas, different things, mechanics behind the way they play their games or whatever. And so when you're doing this, you try to be as efficient as possible. Like we want to show off what our job is, right? Which is concept art, which is design, which is thinking. But when we show these other things, right, you do want to be as efficient as possible where it's like, well, you're going to show a 3/4 block out of the space anyway, right? Like here, let's see. Call of Duty environment art. All right. You're going to do 3/4 shots anyway. You can do things like this, but you're also going to do, areas like that where it's just like a space, you know what I mean? And, like there's things that you have to kind of understand about it, right? And there's, like you're going to do 3/4 shots that maybe aren't so, I guess, story driven, right? But there is things that you do have to understand, like this catwalk up there, right, is some sort of advantage point, this bottom kind of ground area. And there's like there's a light behind here. Chances are they want you to turn that way, right? And so, there's like gameplay mechanics that you want to represent and, and be as efficient as possible. You know what I'm saying? So we don't always get like aerial views, right? But you do get like build outs of the space. And in reality, a lot of this, other than the concept-y ones, right, where it's just one picture, like a lot of the teams, they'll actually build out the space, right? Like, especially nowadays with how prevalent 3D is in, I guess in a lot of pipelines, they'll build it out. Maybe it's not like production ready built, but it is built. And then, the level designers will kind of work in there or vice versa or whatever. And they'll kind of just, use that. But you want to show that. You want to show that you were thinking about that because the first kind of answer that we always get to is, Oh, I just kind of thought about, I just put in some references, and then, I just kind of went from there. You're like, yeah, man, that's what we all do. But what's special about this thing? What were you trying to show, And that's what we want to kind of get from all this. You know what I'm saying? So let's see here. What else we got? I don't know what this place is going to be yet. Neo, like that sci-fi, like kind of Tokyo. Sounds kind of fun. Maybe do some sort of like shooter in that. That'd be kind of fun. We'll see. But enough about level design. What do you guys want to talk about? What are some questions that are eating at you? Yo, Andrew's here. What's up, dude?
What's up, man?
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Nice.
Good. Yeah. My XT3 finally shipped, so we're playing around with that.
Nice. Yo, you got the XT3? Sick.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, photography is great. It's for those that don't do it, do it. Just start. Just try, right? It's probably one of the best things an artist can actually do, because like when we're like when you're first starting, right? And the whole point is you need to kind of make games, you need to make images and do things more. A camera does that so much faster. You know what I mean? Like, because when you make an image on digital, which there's a mileage that you need to do, of course, right? But when you like actually make an image with a camera, it actually makes you start realizing how little of importance rendering really is, because you have photoreal now. You know what I mean? Like, in your hands is a photoreal render machine. You have, everything you need to make a photoreal, because it's an actual photo, right? It sounds funny, but that's what it is. It's like you have this thing that you no longer have quality issues, generally speaking. If you buy a pretty decent camera within the last 10 years, right? The last 20 years even, photoreal isn't really an issue with you. And so we kind of like exit that realm of, hey, is my painting any good? Is my quality bar high enough? Am I clicking render hard enough? Am I, you know what I mean? Like all those things. And it kind of forces you to think like, okay, so how do I make a better image? Like, well, what's going to make me create something that is quote unquote better, right? And that's where like a lot of the photography things for me kind of come into play, where it's like, you just have like a button to press. You have 3 dials, right? You have your aperture, shutter speed, and an ISO, right, which is just your sensor sensitivity, right, or film or whatever you're using. And then from there, you have to make an image that says something. You know what I mean? Because if quality was the measure of how good photography is, right, like if your ability to create something the cleanest, right, or the best, then whoever has the best camera wins, right? Generally speaking. But we know that's not the case. So what do you do, right? How do you make this? How do you make a scene compelling and have a story that actually means something when everybody can quote unquote paint as good as you can, And that's the cool part about, for me, about all of that, where it's just, it kind of forces you to think what's actually important for image making. Because whether it's photography, whether it's 3D, whether it's 2D images, right? The foundations of strong image making are exactly the same, right? We're still making images that compel people or create an experience for an audience in some sort of way, So all of it actually transfers over, and it kind of gets you thinking outside of that box, So sorry, it's a long rant, but cameras be cool.
Yeah, I've been taking some sick cinematic pictures of my kitchen. So, fun.
Dude, I have like a million shots. Like to my left, there's my living room / kitchen, like, all in line. And I have like 50 pictures, because I'll be sitting at my desk just like messing with settings, just trying to get like the most cinematic shot I can, because I can't leave sometimes. I have to like you know, go. I have to like work, provide for my cat, kind of thing. So, you know how it is. Where's my Notion at? Let's see. I had some things I wanted to discuss. Whoop, there it is. No. Oh, in light of, I guess, you know, I guess all the layoffs and things. I don't know what's going on right now. There's some things that, you know, there's been a lot of layoffs and things like that. But from what I've been hearing, what I've been seeing, for some friends and things like that, there's been a lot of like hirings too. But it's funny because like we don't really talk about that. I think, especially in my Discord, sometimes it can get kind of doom and gloom in there where like we hear oh, it's another wave. Like Sony, for example, let go of a bunch of people recently. And not that isn't bad, that it's terrible, and it's like, you know, it's not a great place to kind of, or not a great situation to kind of be in, right? But something that I guess we always hear about, right? We always hear about like, I guess people's layoff story. You know what I mean? Like there's always this idea of like, oh, I just got laid off from this place, you know, because they'll usually announce that sometimes. But we never hear, like, I don't want to say never, but I don't really oftentimes hear like, oh yeah, I just got picked up again. You know what I mean? Because I was talking to some people like maybe a couple months back, and it was like, oh yeah, we got let go from this thing. I'm like, oh shit. And I heard from other people like let go, another people, right? It was like, you know, like almost every week there was somebody that got let go from somewhere. And I'm like, oh shit, dude, like that's terrible, you know, like that's horrible. But, and then, you know, I checked in maybe a couple months later, and I was like, oh yeah, we've been working for like, you know, like 2 months now. I was like, what? Like, I thought everything was bad. Everything was, yeah, it was for a second, you know, and I'm not saying that, you know, I'm not saying that it's like okay or anything like that, right? But there's a lot of like, we don't really talk about those things, which I think for me is really irritating, right? Because it's like, I don't say irritating, but you know, we always, I guess there's always that flare of like, oh shit, everything's going wrong, nothing's going right now, right? And then like, I guess like we don't really talk about the other side, like, oh yeah, no, I did end up finding a job within a couple months, you know what I mean? I did end up finding, you know, a couple of things here and there, and I think it's really important that everyone kind of knows that on the internet, right? Like you only ever get one side to this conversation. You only ever get like, you know, that one post or whatever about the current, I guess, situation. You know what I mean? Like you only ever get that, you know, that post of like, oh, I just got let go or whatever, but you never hear like and vice versa too, right? You always hear the, oh, I got a job, but then, you know, you don't hear that they got let go, or you don't hear that, you know, all these, you don't hear the other side of it is really what I'm trying to say. And I think for me, it's really like, I guess it can be really disheartening sometimes because, you know, on one side you hear people being like, oh yeah, I got hired from this place, I got this job, this and that. But you didn't really hear like, oh, I got let go from that other one though, or this contract fell through, or I've gotten 6 calls and not one of them picked up, kind of thing. You never hear that, right? Because like on my side, for example, I'll be like, oh yeah, I just got some freelance, I'm working on a thing, right? But, you know, yeah, I didn't mention the fact that 3 other contracts fell through right before that. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that like, you know, it's like right or wrong. I'm just saying like it is for a lot of, I guess, impressionable artists right now, right? Especially during this time where there is, you know, a million crises happening, right? With strikes, with, you know, I guess jobs being cut, this and that, AI, you know, and on top of life, you know, in general, right? As hard as life already is, right? There's a lot of, I guess there's this lack of, I guess, understanding when it comes to the other side of things. You know what I mean? And as an artist, as a newer artist, it always like, you know, because people are like, oh yeah, I just landed this job, and everyone's like, oh yeah, it must be perfect. You know, everything's good, right? And then reality, it's like, oh yeah, but they only pay $10 an hour, you know, something like that. We don't ever hear what some of those other things are. And, you know, I just want to kind of talk about that because there's a lot of artists out there that they'll see the post. Everyone sees the post. I just got picked up at Netflix. I just got this. I just got that. Right. And then they're like, damn it, dude. Like they're not mad at you or anything like that. Right. People aren't, or hopefully they're not. If they're not, if they are mad at you about stuff like that, don't be their friend. Right. But it is something where there is a bit of like a disheartening side to that, where it's like, well, I mean, these people are finding work, but I'm not, you know. But then, you know, you don't realize that, oh, this person's been. I think something that I experienced a lot whenever I first started was you would kind of hear like this person got a job, and you're like, fuck, you know, like, damn it, how come I'm not getting any calls back, stuff like that. And then you hear the other side of, oh, they've been doing this for 10 years, you know, they've been applying without success for a while, you know. And it's like, oh, I've only been doing this for 1 year, you know. And it's I don't know if there's any like solution to this. These are just kind of things that I'm like picking up on, because like in the Discord, I'm just kind of watching some of the conversations or some of the things, and I'm like, a lot of it is valid, a lot of it is true. But sometimes you don't actually hear that other side. You know what I mean? Like you don't actually hear when somebody lost a contract, when somebody, you know, or something fell through, or vice versa, when they were laid off and then they got picked up again within a couple months. Because if you hear 10 people got let go, that sucks, right? That's like, oh shit, like what's happening? The industry is ending, right? But then there's a side of like, oh, but like half of them got picked up again relatively quickly, right? And you know, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying, like, you know, as an individual, as an artist, it can be a little bit like, hey, so what does this mean for me? You know, like, I guess it can be a little disheartening to see all that, you know. So there's it's funny because like for us, you always get the edit for everybody else's life except for yours, right? You get the, you know, on Instagram, it's always you know, oh, I landed this, or I got married, or I got, you know, I bought this car. You know, there's a level of success that you see from everybody, right? Because that's the only stuff that you actually want to talk about. No one posts I just woke up and everything's okay. You know what I mean? Like, no, it's usually like, hey, I'm in the hospital, or hey, I'm, you know, there's something wrong, or there's something really right. You always hear like both extremes. But when we think about our life, you're present for your whole life, hopefully. And it's, I don't know, I guess it can be kind of like demoralizing, because like, you know, when you compare your life to their edit, right? You get the full script, you get the whole thing, right? You're like, you know, you just got rejected. You know, you just lost that job. You know that, you know, somebody just, you know, trashed your work or whatever. But you don't know that I just lost a contract. You don't know that I just, you know, did a thing or lost the thing or whatever, you know? And, you know, I just want to talk about that for any artists out there, because it's not as like grim, but it's also not as bright as everyone thinks it is. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's hard to kind of explain, but I hope like just hearing that, hopefully someone actually like understands that, you know, there's nuance to these things. There's differences, and sometimes like, you know, there's a big let go, and you know, but half of them were like, you know, they're restructuring things, or they're doing whatever, right? And it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's just I've just been seeing a lot of like sadness online, especially like in the Discord and everything, just because it can sound pretty bad. But if you talk to enough people, it's like it can be a bright place when we see certain things. You know what I mean? So, but I don't know. I'm just complaining or venting. Who knows? Yo, this level's looking like a level, man. He's leveling up. Going through blocks is kind of weird, though. I will not lie. that. Oops, what's going on here? There you go. Cool.
Yeah, I was talking to one of my gaming buddies, and we were just talking about like the games industry because he's not an artist or anything, but he's super into games, and just how it seems like a lot of the bigger companies seems like they kind of had like an oh shit moment where they were kind of just doing the same thing over and over again and banking on it working with like live service and just like putting out a crappy product. And then like this last like year and a half or almost 2 years in particular, there's been like a huge surge in like indie games that are just like killing it and going viral on like Twitch just by like having a cool or unique idea. So it was interesting to think about how that kind of coincided with a lot of those layoffs too. Like maybe it's not really like the artists in general, but they're cutting all that fat of the company that they stupidly, were just pumping money into.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing too. Like, obviously, for me, I am talking with other higher level artists and things like that, because I'm like I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried about AI in any sort of way, right? Because it's a worrying thing. There's a level of there are things that we have to kind of be wary about, right? And maybe I don't like screaming at the top of my lungs as to like how much of a tragedy some of this stuff is. Maybe I should be louder about it. Who knows? But the whole point is, they're like I do talk to some industry professionals, and some of them are actually, I don't want to say positive, but some of them are not positive in the sense of like, the stealing of art and things like that, but also the idea of, I guess, there is a possibility that the swing of, I guess, power could shift to individuals, right? Because at the end of the day, individuals do have more freedom than companies tend to have. So in that regard, right, there does tend to be this idea that, maybe, indie games will kind of have a bigger kick, right? Because now it's cheaper to make certain games. So a lot of indie studios will actually start popping up, kind of thing, right? I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm not saying this is how it's going to go or how it should be. I am just saying this is just what I heard. And, it's interesting. I don't know. It's just something where, I guess time will tell. But what I am saying is, as you kind of talk to more artists, like, be, I don't want to say vocal about it, but, just talk and interact with people. I think some of the biggest conversation or growth kind of moments that I have is during those conversations with other artists, especially artists that are more senior than you are. People that have, for one, been through a round of layoffs, like 08 was a big one for a lot of the older artists, right? Because, if we remember correctly, the economy exploded. And that affected game artists too, right? Maybe not as directly as some of the stuff happening nowadays, right? But it is something where there are things that have happened, and it's not like this is an isolated event where it's like the only time something like this has ever gone through, right? So, talk to some of these older artists, and then talk to some of the higher level artists that I guess, there's a seniority that they have in their studios, because those are the people that are actually making decisions in a lot of these places, right? They have, I guess, a certain amount of, I don't want to say power, but there is a certain amount of pull that these individuals have that, like, you want to see what they're kind of getting into as these lead kind of players, right? Because, a lot of times, yeah, they might not be using AI, but there are things that they have in mind. Like, I'll talk to one of my friends, and he's like, oh yeah, we're looking for these types of artists, right? And, that directly correlates with whatever they're doing, So it's really, I don't know, it's really eye-opening a lot of times. And usually for me, whenever I kind of have one of those conversations, it's usually very enlightening for me. Because, it's just me putting a thermometer out there. Like, what's the temperature like right now? Because I need to know for myself, right? Because there's skills that I need to be aware of. I don't know everything, right? But if there's a new technology that comes out, I'll at least talk to some people. like for example, there's the idea. So I was talking to my production designer once, and you know how you can I guess mocap technology is getting better, where like especially like the stuff they did in Mandalorian and all those things, where you can put on a suit, you can do a thing, and then you just kind of like bring it all into the whatever program, and then you can basically make you can animate all these things really easily, or you kind of just do all these things really quickly, right? And when I was talking to him about it, and he's like, oh yeah, that technology is really cool, but it actually doesn't solve a problem that we have, right? Because he was saying that there's a lot of issues, like when it comes down to like animation, because we were talking about animation at this point. He said, he was like, whenever, like the problem that it's solving isn't a problem that we have. I was like, oh, so what are you talking about? Because he goes, oh yeah, because it's really good at doing realistic things, right? Where, you have somebody chewing on something, or, creating small hand motions, or, acting, right? Doing smaller things. And he said that our animators, or, generally speaking, our animators are actually really good at that, right? Because they know how to kind of operate in that space, right? But what they do have a problem with is getting the physics right for like big moments, right? Where someone is kind of like flying through buildings and, getting all those things correct. But you can't do that with some of those moments, because you can't throw a person physically through some of these stunts. Some stunts are definitely possible, others are not. And the ones that we're good at is the thing that the technology is good at, right? So it doesn't really help that much. And I actually found that very interesting, because at the time, everyone was freaking out about, oh wow, yeah, you can just put a dude in a suit and you're like set, right? And then like actually talking to people in production, because it was like online everywhere. Like you see everybody talking about it. But actually in production, a lot of the people were actually complaining about it, because they're like, oh, it doesn't actually solve the things that we're needing to solve. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. Just a small example, and it's probably a very specific one, but the whole point I'm trying to kind of put out there is that, when you talk to these people, especially higher level artists, and see what they think, there's usually something about it, because there's the hype train that everyone's on, right? Especially like I would say even 3D is that hype train. There's a lot of like, shit, I'm in 3D right now. But there's a lot of like things where, they're like, oh, you can do these things, and look, I made this like really, I made this mountain really quickly, this and that. I'm like, yeah, but I can just throw in a photo real quick. You know what I mean? Or there's a lot of things where it's like, you don't really need all that control. You don't really need a lot of those things ever, because, especially like seeing some people, they're like, oh yeah, look how like photo real I can get this whole thing. Look how high the quality is. And I'm like, but that's not our job. Our job is to design. Our job is to, create, I guess, interesting ideas. And then we kind of get into the zone of like buying all of the Kitbash 3D sets or kits, or buying all the JAMA kits, and then just putting them in a scene, and then there you go. But like, it's not even, you can't even do that in production. You can't take somebody else's model, take a screenshot or a render of it, and then put some atmosphere and call it your concept. It doesn't actually work that way. But that's where everyone's going for whatever reason. You know what I mean? And it's so wild to me, because I'm like, in production we have to design all that shit, right? Like you can't just grab somebody's character and just go, hey, this is the character I designed. It's like, no, man, like you have to make it, and that comes from like just strong design skills. But it's as somebody that works in production and somebody that actually teaches like a lot of students, I get that so often, right? Where it's like, yeah, you bought this cool New York or this sci-fi kit or something. So you can't use that. You're not allowed to, right? And then, yeah, some productions buy realistic things, but that's not always the case, And it's you want to really talk to higher level artists and see like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you do? Because I have my friends, I have my colleagues or mentors and stuff like that we kind of like bounce ideas off of, because I need to know like what's actually important. Like, if somebody worked at a big project, I always go, hey, what was that like? Or well, what did you guys do there? Like, oh, it's a lot of the same stuff, or, you hear them say, oh, it's this groundbreaking technology. This is this crazy thing where, it makes our job easier. Generally speaking, that doesn't exist, but there are things that kind of make things faster, but never like straight up does it for us. Right. So it's really, I don't know. It's very, it's more like, I guess what I'm really trying to say is just talk to people, just be around, say things to people, inquire about things, make friends, right? There's a lot of artists that just want to like kind of just hang out in a corner and just be a fly on the wall. It's like, that doesn't work. That's not how we learn, right? Because you have to kind of interact with people to really understand this industry more. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Just ranting.
Are you meeting professionals who are saying that they're looking for artists who can use AI in hiring?
I guess for concept art, right? I generally know, right? But clients that I've interacted with have, right? Where they're like, oh, like a big thing that's been happening a lot more often than I care to say. It's been a lot of, hey, we have this kind of AI generated image that kind of says what we need it to say, and then we need you to create the rest of the world, right? You're like, fucking Jesus, It's like, because essentially that was somebody's job, or I mean, ideally that would have been my job, hopefully. But it's a lot of that, right? So I guess in production, and the biggest kicker about all of this is you got to understand that the people that hate AI are just loud about it, right? Because the people that are actually okay with it, it's just not popular to say it, but I mean, people are okay with it. I just want to make that clear for everybody, where it's like, as you're doing this, as you're traversing this land, when it's okay to like AI, I guarantee you 50% of the industry will just be like, yeah, I've been using it for 3 years now, because it's been, however long it's been. Like, it's been 2 years or whatever right now. And it's been a lot of like, oh yeah, I hate this because this is gross and disgusting. And there's people out there, obviously. We've seen some of them, but it's more than you think. And I guess that's one of the bigger things to understand,
I saw this morning online, they're saying in China, a lot of companies that fire all the artists because in China, they mostly do illustrations, right? So they use AIs. And then the AI, so-called AI artists, they just raise their price. So at the end, the company was like, you raise the price, the quality is not going up. So the company went back to the original artist. Yeah. So it's a very interesting way to see, like, sure, AI got like upper hand right now, but in the long term, no, it's not gonna work. Yeah.
It's really interesting, and I think for me, like, I'm very positive about how things are going to turn out. I think when people realize how important, because I think that's the issue, right? Where we get a lot of artists or a lot of people that don't think art's important, right? I don't say it like this, but engineers think a lot like that. A lot of like CEOs or higher ups think like that. Where it's just a painting. Who cares? You know what I mean? But that's why they buy the game. You know what I mean? Because if you watch the movie, because if it didn't look good, you would hear about it. You know what I'm saying? It's like we create this experience for the audience, right? And there's a lot of things that go kind of go unnoticed, right? Just like what I was talking about with color keys, just like what I talk about in my class. There's a lot of little things that go unnoticed, right? From literally setting up the horizon line 1 inch up or 1 inch down. There's a reason. From or even the way you do the lighting design, the color design, all those things that we know that an AI artist or somebody that hasn't gone through the fundamentals does not know, right? Yeah, they can probably make a better quality image than me, but at the end of the day, this is exactly what I've been saying before. There are thousands of artists that could make better images than me, right? Some of them are higher leveled, but a lot of them aren't, right? A lot of them would not be able to compete at the level that I compete at, right? And it's not because of their quality. It's the same idea behind what I was talking about with when Andrew brought up the camera idea, right? It's not the render quality that actually matters anymore, because it's usually what you're saying behind the image, right? And AI artists, generally speaking, won't be able to do that. Or I guess artists that are primarily AI, because once you get actual artists using AI, that's a whole different game. But that's not the concern here. The concern is random people coming in being like, "Hey, I'm an AI artist." Really, they're just able to type okay, and then you fire all your artists, and then you're like, why does this look like trash? Why isn't these images hitting the same as before? Yeah, it's because every thought that went into it is now gone, and you have this sterile ass image that doesn't actually mean anything. And my issue with all of it is, I feel like there's going to be this big wave of like change where it's like, oh shit, yeah, we got rid of all of our artists, and then we realize that we actually need them. And that's my issue, where it's like, oh, we actually need them, and then we go back and we hire again, but you've already screwed us over. You've already kind of burned that bridge, and I think that's the kind of repair or damage that's going to be done that I guess would be more interesting to avoid, right? Or better, it would be better to avoid than I guess going through all that. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Yeah, that's going to be harsh.
Yeah. Cool. But yeah, guys, well, pretty simple, right? I think hopefully this makes sense, right? I did want to kind of, this isn't where it's going to end. I just kind of put some boxes around. I put some representations of people, and we're just kind of like looking at this space, right? And I'm going to spend some extra time on this to make it look better and do more things with it. But that's the general idea of what we're trying to cover for this month, right? Level design is that when level designers give us a block out, there's always something that we're trying to understand about a space, right? When they put something there, there's got to be a reason. Every block has a reason to be somewhere, right? Maybe not all my blocks. My blocks suck, but their blocks are pretty good. So just really understand what all that means. When you make your level, right, the biggest thing that I want you to know is that, entrances and exits, right? There's a big entrance right here, or /exit, depending how you use it, right? This one, the first thing that I even made this whole area off of. And there's this smaller one over there, right? You see that one, right? Those things mean something. Where are they located, and how are they contributing to the gameplay, right? What are we doing to make sure that a character has to run through this area, and how do we make it harder for them, right? All I did was make sure that we have even ground, right? When we're in the tunnel, right? There's some, whether it's a tunnel, whether it's, whatever it is, you can't access it from anywhere other than either side. When they get through that, whatever fight they have to get through, now they're at a disadvantage because they entered a different area. And that disadvantage comes in a couple different ways. There's the higher ground here. There's the vantage point here, which is technically another higher ground. But, when they go up the stairs, same ground, right? And then where are they going? They need to go to the farthest end. They can't just climb up this thing. They have to go up this ramp, around while getting shot at, from a bunch of different angles. 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3. And from there, then they'll get to wherever they need to go, right? And so we create the space that has inherently a certain amount of danger for our characters or for our player, right? There's not always going to be someone there, right, at every point, but the whole point is there can be someone there, and that's kind of what we want to think about, right? Same with these boxes, right? Like just using them as a point to where, like, once they get up the ramp, they can't just shoot at the character. They can't just auto, shoot at. They just won't instantly see this person. They have to actually go around, which is actually super difficult, right? And little things like that really do go a long way. So when you make your level, understand what you're supposed to be doing, why we're going to be there, and from there, we'll start set dressing and actually making this look good. We'll talk about that next week. Right now, we just need to create a model that we can actually use. If you're part of the Livestream Plus, whatever level you choose, I'll give you feedback on that and kind of help you push that. You can be whatever you want. Like what I recommend doing, reference a game, right? Specifically a game that you want to play or that you've played before. Use that as a reference point because we're not level designers at the end of the day, right? But we do need to know just a little bit about kind of like what's going on, right? But yeah, so if there's any questions, just hit me up. But for now, that's all I got, guys. And oh yeah, for those in the YouTube chat, yo, what's up? You know, thanks for watching. Kylo Legend says, is it speed runner proof? Probably not, dude. Those guys, they figure out the craziest shit. I was watching like a Portal speed run. I was watching some like Kingdom Hearts speed runs a little while back, or you know, and it's just like they're just like glitching their way through the game, which is incredible. They'll finish like a 30-hour game in like an hour. I'm like, what is happening? I didn't even know you could do that, you know. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic. Cool. All right, guys. So with that in mind, we're starting the new month. You do still have time. You have until basically next Monday, right, to kind of sign up for the live stream plus if you want to be part of that, right? You can sign up whenever, but you will be behind. So you have about 1 week until you're actually officially behind. So if you'd like to sign up and get feedback and just kind of learn something new, definitely please join, right? It is something that there's like almost 30 people in there. You know, we do feedback every Monday. It's in a private stream that we have specifically for them. And you know, we just kind of go through ideas. And I think a lot of the learning actually happens there too, because a lot of times, you know, there's a very specific thing that I actually teach right here, right? Where, you know, it was a first person shooter or whatever. But once I see someone else's level, we can actually kind of correct a lot of those other things that I actually can't mention here because there's no context for me to mention them in. I can't mention a lot of the puzzle mechanics or RPG mechanics because this isn't that kind of game, right? But when someone else does it, that gives us the opportunity to kind of mention all that. So, you know what I mean? So, you know, it's good times. I don't want to say you're missing out, but I mean, you are missing out a little bit. So. But yeah, so with that in mind, thanks for hanging out, guys. I'll see you in 7 days, hopefully. Later.